if your wife wanted to join that, um, I could. We talked about it before, but I know they're doing it on a regular basis now, and
Okay.
it's actually so so I could get that information to you as well.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And even in general, like even like I mean, but you guys already see a lot of his classes, anyways, right?
Yeah,
Chief Robert Pincus,
they pop up with some of them are I
your
guess he's
friends.
in French and speaking French.
Yeah, yeah,
uh
yeah.
you know and so we catch the ones that we can that we can understand.
Yeah. Okay, well, the English, the women's class is in English, and it's very good. Sephora, she did it when we first got married, and that whole thing. So, and it was very powerful, and he goes very deep into it. And this is woman, what woman means, this whole thing. Actually, I sat in the class too. It was like kind of intense. But anyways, all right, so we're gonna keep going forward with everything. And so like we're basically almost like the day before, the fast, right? And the thing is that, now it's like, like what are we thinking about? Like what's our mindset? What's going on, right? Like because this isn't Yom Kippur, right? Like we're, atoning for our sins and we're fasting, the whole thing. This is a whole nother thing, right? This is about cleansing ourselves. This is about cleansing ourselves to be able to like receive a specific light. So one of the things I want to do is I had a whole thing with Otinel, a day ago, and we did it on YouTube. But I talked a little bit about my journey and my past, this whole thing. So when I first started on my Jewish journey, it was probably I would say like around like 2003, right? And I started as people know a place called the Kabbalah Center. And the thing about the Kabbalah Center was an interesting place because you know I wasn't even looking for anything. I just, like I said, I met a girl. She was going there, and then I went there, and it just like boom changed my life, right? Because a lot of the teachings that I learned there was Rav Ashlag and the Arizal, right? And it was like hugely impactful, for me, and just being like my early 20s, just figuring out life, doing business in LA. And so I started there, I was probably like, 22, 23 years old. And I started there, and that was like the next, several years of my life, were there, right? Like every day, like that was my thing, right? And eventually, I left there and then went in to the Orthodox and did the whole conversion thing. And then boom, I come to Israel a little bit after that. And so it's been half of my life has been involved in this. You know what I mean? It's random, right? So anyway, so what I want to do is I want to, I just I want to show you. I want to share with you the teacher who inspired me on this whole journey because, as you know, I grew up in a Muslim house. My parents were like very successful people. We had a very great upbringing, but it was the teachings of Kabbalah and the questions of Kabbalah that really adjusted my frame of like my relationship with the creator, right? And even though my parents gave a great upbringing in Islam, they were even into Sufism, which is like a very mystical, like kind of like a Kabbalah understanding of Islam. They were in that type of a thing. And so, but even with that, the questions that the Kabbalah made me ask and the scenarios and everything that's connected to it, just really kind of like made me go on this journey of awakening, and I didn't even know, as much as now you hear me talk about the connection with African Americans and all those things. I didn't find any of that out until I met Rabbi Pinchas, right, and start learning with him, and I wasn't really like into like 2000, like 2002. I mean 2022, right? So 2002 I started Kabbalah Center. 2022 I meet Rabbi Pinchas, and I found out about the Ebos and the transatlantic slave trade and the African Jewry, the whole thing. Before that, it was just about God. You know what I mean? Like it was just like God. Like I didn't have any. ethnic connection. I just saw myself, hey, I'm converting, this type of thing. And lo and behold, boom, this is like my ancestry. You know what I mean? So, anyways, so I want to share, we'll start with a little bit of this, his talk about Purim. This was like in 1993, Rob Berg, and one of his son is a very close friend of mine, Yehuda Berg, right? You may, if you see, I have some pictures of us on Instagram, whatever. But it's nice, and I grew up with them, and my family, when I was at the Kabbalah Center, they came also. Like my mom actually worked for the Kabbalah Center for a period of time, and she worked for Madonna. It's a whole crazy story. Why would my mom as a professor be working with Madonna? Okay, at the Kabbalah Center. Anyways, it's a whole big story. I'm not going to go into it now because we're in this year, but I do want to dedicate, this class. I want to dedicate a lot of this class to the elevation of one of my rabbis, my Rosh Yeshiva from Or Sameach, Rabbi Nosson Schiller. He just passed away on before Shabbat, and I'm still kind of like in shock. You know what I mean? So I haven't really talked about it so much publicly, but I wanted to give an elevation to his neshama because he was like a huge inspirational, person to me as well. Right? I have a few, I have four rabbis that have impacted my life that are all passed away now. And Rob Berg, we're going to hear some of his words in a second. But also Rabbi Schiller, who's a Rosh Yeshiva or Sameach, one of the top yeshivas in the world, one top in Jerusalem, and I had the privilege of learning there for 4.5 years, almost 5. It would have been completely 5 if it wasn't for Corona, like shutting everything down. But that was the beginning of me. That's where I started learning from my, become a rabbi, and all these things all started there. And that was the beginning of my life in a lot of ways. Like, even though I was in my 30s, like it sounds crazy to say that, but it's like, it was really was the beginning of my life. And so Rabbi Schiller was a huge person that just was just on so many levels. I mean, I'm gonna talk more about as time goes on, but I just wanted this year to kind of like be in his merit and that he should be elevated. And then I have another rabbi, Rabbi Avraham Rachmil, who's also at Or Sameach, who was my like one-on-one Rebbe, for like 3 years there while I was there, and he passed away. And he's there. He spoke at my engagement party, and whatever. He's just amazing, amazing, amazing person. Amazing person. He should also receive. And then I have Rabbi Zweig. And Rabbi Zweig was like kind of like in a way like my first Rebbe at Or Sameach. And he was the one who really opened up the Gemara to me. One of the things, all of them have said profound things. And I'm trying to like not make this about that because, but I know this is like now is the time to like start speaking things into existence, right? Now, like we're in the opening of this frame of Purim, which is a complete elevation. This whole process is the elevation to put us into a new reality so we could go into the month of Nisan and change everything in Purim. I mean, in Pesach, right? So the spiritual work that we're doing as elevation is for that, right? So now's the time to start speaking things in existence, speaking about people, talking to God, feeling the light, feeling the shift of the energy, being aware of the energy, right? And so Rabbi Zweig, he was just like, I don't know, he's just so many things. And they gave me their hearts, you know what I'm saying? They gave everything they had to me because that was their life, right? So you have them, and then so we're going to learn from Rob Berg, right? We're going to learn. I don't know how far we'll go into it because it's like it's a little lengthy what he's doing, and I also want to go into this. We're about to go into this whole concept of Mordechai's dream being answered and Esther's prayer, right? And so this is both strengths for man and woman, and to be able to have even connect to this very powerful life. So we're going to learn that inside. But before we go there, I want to learn a little bit from my rabbi, Rabbi Berg. I mean, he's passed away, and I visit him. It's interesting too. He was a very controversial figure, and because he was like very open about teaching, people who weren't considered Jewish. Right? He didn't care who you were. If you wanted to learn Torah, he would teach you, right? And so because he was teaching such a high level of Kabbalah, and he came from such a prestigious like lineage, you know what I mean? That he knows, you know what I mean? It's not like some fake stuff. that he was like banned in a lot of places, you know, and I just remember when I first started going to yeshiva, you know, the yeshiva I was going to, the the rabbi who started it, um, Rabbi, jeez, I don't know, my mind's going blank. Anyway, so they started this. The rabbi who started Or Sameach with Rabbi Schiller. It was two of them. They started, and I can't think why I can't think of it. It's like right in my head, but I can't say it. Anyways, but the point is the same. So they started yeshiva together, and um, and so and so the rabbi who started the yeshiva with Rabbi Schiller, who passed away on Shabbat, the other rabbi, he also started another huge yeshiva. But the point is, he grew up with who I'm about to play some teachings from, right? So he grew up with them. And so when I first came to Or Sameach, they're like, oh, you know, because they knew I went to the Kabbalah Center, right? And so they're like, oh, you know, this, blah, blah, talking negative. But they're saying, like, the issue with him was that he was so great and his philosophy was, like, so anti. And a lot of Jews actually were starting to leave synagogues to come to learn with him, right? So they had to stop. It was a big mess. But the point is, he was banned by a lot of people, and he suffered a lot, you know, and his family suffered a lot. But I met them, and they were very kind to my family. I don't know if I mentioned it, but my younger sister also converted as well. And you know, I have a nephew, Elijah. You know, interesting enough. And anyway, so my whole family eventually came into the Kabbalah Center and learned. Not all of them went as far as I did or my sister, but we're all there. Anyways, okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. All right, so okay, so we're gonna learn some Rob Berg. Hold on one second. Get this right.
Tonight is Yud Daled in Adar, and tonight we read the Megillah. For most of you who have already attended the Kriyat HaMegillah, the reading of the Megillah, in previous years already understand that we are not here merely to rehearse, review the victory of this glorious event, which was the Jewish Nitzachon, the Jewish freedom from the clutches of Haman. Tonight, what we prefer and what has been provided for us is the opportunity to be able to follow the instructions of Mordechai, Daniel, and Esther, by which they themselves produced the victory and conquest over Haman and all the enemies of Israel. And that is why it is called Megillat Esther, because for the first time in the history of mankind, the Kabbalah, which was revealed 3,800 years ago by Avraham Avinu, however, never practiced by the people, and for the first time, the various combinations of the 72 names that were necessary to provide freedom, to provide conquest over our enemies, came into existence. Therefore, it is referred to as Megillat Esther, not referring to her name, which was incidentally Esther, but rather the word Esther, which means concealment, and for the first time, the Jews had the opportunity to make use of the combinations of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the Tetragrammaton, the next most powerful name of God, Eke, Aleph K, Yud K, and the combination of 72 names. This in turn brought about the victory, but it was a lesson for Jews of all times that if they wanted to take control over their lives in every aspect, the place to find it at that time would be Megillat Esther. Now, while all of this information subsequently, after Mordechai and Daniel, who returned from Israel with this information, and then subsequently this information that was already known to the Jews in Persia became a written document revealed by Moshe Rabbeinu and Eliyahu Navi to Rabbi Shimon. Unfortunately, over the past 2,000 years, we have forgotten what Megillat Esther means. We have forgotten that we can take control of our lives. And we have forgotten that God did not just send us to the dogs to be annihilated generation after generation after generation since the destruction of the temple. In our day, we have the zechut of understanding what Megillat Esther is about. We have in this document the revelation for absolute freedom. Absolute freedom. But we must have the consciousness to know, number one, what is the purpose of reading it? Number two, to understand that within this Megillah, we have included, which is included in the Megillat Esther, every combination of the powers of the alphabet that God gave the Jews at the splitting of the Red Sea, in which they used then to create a change in the natural laws and order of the universe to that extent that they can split a sea, that today, if we understand these three requirements, to know what the Megillat Esther is about, and that it is not an instrument that has been traditionally given to the Jews to remember and recall the wonderful miracle that took place on Purim. No. More important, that we, making use of it, will in our own lives achieve a change if necessary, so that we can also continue to live in a world that may be crumbling all around us. Nevertheless, we can be not the victims, but the survivors. I want to read the Ari to make the connection to the Megillah, and so all of us, whether we understand or do not, the important thing is the reader will be meditating. Just to give you an idea, we have even colored it because it is so concealed. That's why it's called Esther. Esther coming from the word seter, concealment. That's why they call her Esther. Her name was actually Hadassah. It was not Esther. Why did they give a name Esther? Again, to provide us with a clue that we did not pick up for 2,000 years. That we were talking about Megillah, which means revelation, Esther, which means the secrets, the codes. And if you notice how in some words we utilize 3 different combinations. It is a very complex system that through the benefit of the Ari HaKadosh, who clearly define each and every single concept within the Megillah, so that when we read this Megillah today, we will be revealing the light that is necessary to remove darkness. For wars, illness, financial instability are all forms of darkness, part of the Dark Lord. If we can strike the match, that's all that's necessary. Can you imagine? Instead of going through 2,000 years and continuing into this exile, which means we're surrounded by crime, violence, recessions, etc., that we tonight, if we have no questions of the validity of Purim, that Purim for us was not a miraculous event, but for us Purim was the manifestation, for the first time in history, a people, not one sage like Rabbi Shimon, but the people, all combined to reveal such an enormous, awesome light that what we define as recessions, cancer, and you name it, that we're all familiar with, are all part of that definition called darkness. And if we can generate enough light here this evening, as this light is being generated around the globe this evening, we then can remove, to whatever extent that we have recreated in the entire environment, sufficient light to remove from this environment the darkness that unfortunately becomes stronger, excessive, by each and every single passing day. However, even chas v'shalom, we should not be successful towards changing the whole world, which is possible this evening, and only this evening. At least we shall walk out of this room knowing that our personal destiny will have been altered if it included Satan consciousness, which is darkness. Another significant point worth mentioning is this idea, and which is required to be instilled in our consciousness, because there is nothing more that can prevent illness, that can prevent financial instability, breakdown of relationships, as our own consciousness. If we fall into the trap that all around us there is a recession, depression, there are plagues, illness all around the world, and therefore we are concerned maybe it should and will affect us. If we break down into that doubt that it will affect us, unfortunately, we will upon ourselves all that which is around us. So it is essential we never lose sight of what we captured this evening. Walk out with it and keep it, retain it, that no matter what goes on all around you, you know in your own mind that what I captured this evening has removed, as it did then, for the first time in Persia, will work for us this evening. I also want to read a Zohar, strange as it may sound, which again indicates the awesome power that existed and continues to exist in Persia. Because all of us could have asked the question. There were Jews left after the destruction of the first temple in Israel. Not all Jews were banished from Israel. Why? Why did it happen in Persia? And what is even stranger than the fact that for the first time there was a revelation enough and sufficient for all of mankind to benefit from this light, the action of the Persian Jews in Persia at that time. I read you the finale of the scenario. It began in Persia, and how is it going to end? How is it going to end? Who knows? Are we prophets? But because we do not have to be prophets, says the Zohar, if we can only access into the information contained in the Zohar, we are then already prophets. We don't have to guess. We can tell what the future is going to consist of, and then intelligently observe the movements around us. Says the Zohar in Parshat Shlach Lecha, talking about Mashiach.
Hello? Yes? Is this for the Rav? Yes, just a minute.
Hello? Yes. Yes, okay. This is not the call. This is Mexico, but I'm expecting another call. Yeah, okay, ask me to hold on. I read now from the Zohar, bringing a verse from an obvious place, which deals with the subject matter under discussion, from Daniel. Verse in Daniel, chapter 5. Valzeh Samech HaMashiach, and he's discussing in this particular section the idea of Mashiach. V'samach Rosh HaYeshiva shenidvaseh b'zeh, and the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the companions, will rejoice in the fact that this is being explained, this is being brought to the forefront. And the companions, Rabbi Shimon and his companions, were sitting and asking, because in Daniel, which is in Aramaic in this particular section, he's discussing Paris Prisat Malchutecha Be'aviv Lemadai Uparas. Speaking about Mashiach, he discusses again Paras Umadai. Paras Umadai, as we will read this evening, refers to Persia. And the idea that Mashiach has to do with Persia, again, finished. History has already made its imprint on mankind. We Jews here and all over the world where they understand what the Megillah is about will take advantage of the reading this evening. But what does Persia now have to do with Mashiach? Amalo kachu vadai. Zohar says absolute. Absolute. The idea of Mashiach, again, Mashiach will be bound up with Paras. Going to be bound up again with Persia, like we could never get rid of the Persians. Paris Prisat Malchutecha Harasha'a al Yedei Mashiach HaAcher. There will be a war. The Mashiach HaAcher, there will be two Mashiachs. Without going into the details, Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. And after all of these preliminaries to the coming of Mashiach, when there will be wars with Mashiach ben Yosef, some say that he may die. ואחר כך ישלוט מלך פרס ויכבוש הרבה מלוכות. That Persia, in the time of Melech HaMashiach, will again take control over the entire world as it once did. I can tell you personally, I have seen the plan. Plan that was established in 1976 in Persia on how to take control over the entire world. I saw it, and it's on schedule. ויכבוש הרבה מלוכות, they will capture all of the countries. והוא ישלט על ארץ הקדושה. Not only will he rule all over the world, but he will also rule over Israel. Yud Bet Chodesh. His presence will be in Israel. Or what do we think? The invincible Israel, B'li Ayin Hara, let it remain so, will remain. Not under the circumstances that they present themselves. It doesn't appear how they could remain. But we believe that we are invincible in Israel. והוא ישלוט על ארץ הקדושה י"ב חודש. והוא ישלוט ויהרוג רבים. And he will slaughter and annihilate many in Israel. ובתוכם, and amongst them, Mashiach Ahu, Mashiach ben Yosef. ואחר כך ייפול מלך פרס, and only then, after the 12 months, shall he fall. Very strange coincidence. Here we talk about the first time, and unfortunately, the only time that the Jews experienced Mashiach was during the time of Esther and Mordechai. Now again, in our time, that same country will emerge as the world power. Some of us have our doubts, although Twin Towers could set some example as to where they're going. As everyone knows today, it is connected with Iran. But what does that mean for us? And why this connection? Why Persia? Why Persia? Which was our original question. Why there? Where the Jews first experience real freedom. Not in the wilderness, not during the Holy Temple, but after they were banished by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, overrun by the Babylonian Empire, only to wind up in Persia. And there, for the first time, demonstrate the power of the Zohar, demonstrate the power of the names that we make use of this evening. And again, after almost over 2,000 years, who will be the formidable foe that will capture the entire world, including Israel again? And we are under the impression, after 2,000 years, we have come in control of Israel. And here the Zohar, 2,000 years ago, is not predicting. Rabbi Shimon was not a prophet. Rabbi Shimon only knew the future, because for him, past, present, and future was all in the same frame of reference. Now, he could see all parts of the movie. It's like we go to a movie. While we may not know the end, but it's on film already, there's no problem about the end. So too is the course of history. So too is the course of history. But why there? Why again? And we come to the usual answer. For those of you who have been studying Kabbalah for a long time, know that when we discuss Jerusalem is the holy city, unlike most Jews who say the reason why the holy city is holy of Jerusalem is because the holy temple was located there, we know it's the other way around. We know the cause is not the temple. Temple is something of a physical nature. Temple is an effect. The land of Israel is the energy center of the world. The energy center mentioned in Bereshit by the Zohar in detail, where Shina, the root of all of the nourishment, not the manifestation. Europe is the manifestation of the Dark Lord. He plays games. Satan plays games. Doesn't play him only in Persia once in a while. He'll come around on Purim, try to annihilate all the Jews. But he was unsuccessful in his home base. So what does he do? Goes out of his home base. Because as we know, a home base of extreme negativity is like poison ivy. The poison ivy leaf is always accompanied. Adjoining the poison ivy leaf is the leaf that can cure poison ivy. Alongside every form of negativity, alongside we find positivity. The reason that Mordechai, Esther, and Daniel are in Shush or Hamadan. Daniel is in Shush. Why are they there? Because they died there? No. Because they, for all subsequent generations, whether the Jews had an idea of making use and utilizing Mordechai and Esther and Daniel, unfortunately Jews have never dreamt of taking advantage. They would go there and ask for a blessing. Little did they know that you just don't go there for a blessing. You've got to connect with them. They're not physical human beings that we come and there we are. They're connections. Those connections are mentioned in the Zohar. How do you connect when you go to visit Mordechai and Esther or Daniel? They didn't know. The reason they're there is because they, as Persia, will be dealing with the exile. With the exile. It is that buffer. When used, it is the buffer to keep the negative aspect, the Gehenom, which the source is in that area. The root, the origin of Satan is located in that area. That's why Bavel. Today, Hussein, Saddam Hussein, they are there. So that if we can connect and tap their energy, because they have connected to the positive side, to the positive energy that must of necessity exist there, so as to create a security shield around Satan, around his wellspring of energy. God has never created evil in the world without an appropriate accompanying magen, without an accompanying shield to secure ourselves. What we are doing this evening is connecting with Mordechai and Esther. We're connecting with Daniel so that we can tap the energy, as I will read from the Zohar.
Okay. So yeah, it was a little bit. It was a thing, right? But it's the point of it is to see one to share part of my development stages. But these guys are real deal. You know what I mean? And humongous people. And Rap Pinkas, Chief Rabbi Pinkas, he's on that level. So that's how I was able to connect to Rabbi Pinkas because I met other Kabbalists and other Mikubalim. I was like, same, okay. And I was like checking him out. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I already had a friend that learned by I knew who Rabbi Pinchas was actually. Like I knew about him. He's like this guy who was in the old city of Jerusalem. It was like one of these type of things. But you never saw him. Type of a thing. And so from that frame of reference, I had a friend of mine, a Haitian rabbi actually, and he was learning with people. He's like, oh, you gotta come, you gotta come, you gotta come, this, blah, blah, blah. We're opening this yeshiva, this whole thing. I was like, all right, whatever, right? And eventually, I came over there, and then I was like in and out. You know what I mean? It was a whole because he was in such a different style of learning than I was in. You know what I mean? I was like in the Talmud and the legal cases and figuring these things out, and then they're all into like this other. I'm like, I don't have time for this like esoteric stuff. Like I got to figure this out. So but it completed. And he taught me another way of learning the Talmud. From that perspective as well. So he really shaped me and allowed me to have two bases to because you need both. You can't have just the analytical, logical. You have to have the deep spiritual as well too. So he was able to bring that. But I wanted to share that. But also I wanted to also see like a few things in that. Right. I mean, one thing you see the intensity around this time, and how important it is, and the power of it, and the energy of it. And then also one of the. I mean, I'm skipping over a few things I want to say, but the biggest thing is like it's saying it right in the Zohar that the Persia is going to rise up against Israel, Iran people. Who do you think is funding everything? Who do you think is funding Hezbollah? Iran. Who do you think is funding Hamas? Iran. Who do you think is funding the Houthis? Iran. They're trying to do new. This is right there inside. We're doing it right now. We're dealing with it, and Rabbi Berg is explaining the energy of a strong negativity is in that whole area. Babel. That's where Babel was at, right? Iraq, Iran. That's where that the whole Babylon, that whole situation, right? So it's just saying that like it's not just like it's over there. It's like some concept. This is like a real thing, right? It's like the Torah is not like it's really like really a real dynamic, whatever. But yeah, but it was just like this was like the beginning of like a really amazing spiritual experience, And the thing about it, I got a chance to spend time with the Robert, like as a, and really a lot with his sons. Like we became friends. That's how my mom and them got involved. It was through that whole channel. And his wife, Karen Berg, is also amazing, a humongous woman teacher. But again, they were shunned by the Jewish community, and they really didn't like what they're doing. But if it wasn't for that approach, I would never have made it. You know what I mean? Because I wouldn't have been able to just, walk up to a synagogue and say, hey, I want to convert to Judaism. Be like, why would I do that? I'm good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why would I want to become Jewish? You know what I mean? Like, what would be, I was already, Muslim this, we're mystical in our own right. But it was the dynamic of Rabbi Ashlag and the questions and the RE and this whole new system of thought. And I was like, man, it's too much, man. Jeez, So it was a process, It still took me from 2003, you can say at the Kabbalah Center, to 2013. I went through a formal Orthodox conversion. And in 2013 to 2016 is when I came to Israel. And then from 2016 to 2022, I became a rabbi. So like that's how long this whole thing has been. You know what I mean? Like it's not like, this is like, and I had no idea that one was going to lead to another, to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other. It was just like it just unfolded. And I deal with that. Okay, so let's go into this whole this dynamic of this Esther, this Mordechai that rise to greatness through adversity. All right, go ahead. Yeah, jump in, please.
I really, Baruch Hashem, I really appreciate this because this this Purim series that you've been doing
Yeah.
between Otanel, Jews over in India, and with us, every single class is like a new and deeper revelation. And I love the fact that it's like an onion, and it just there's so much depth and so much, but it's not like Greek philosophy, where it's all abstract and it's really just mental, but rather this information, I mean it makes you, there's self evaluation involved, there's new perception about how we see life, and just like just now, Rabbi Berg, may his memory be blessed.
Amen.
I've listened to a few of his classes that he's had, that
Oh,
he
you
also.
knew about him. You knew about this.
Yeah, yes.
Ah, man. Okay, I didn't know. All right, so I didn't bring. Okay.
Yeah, but no, through you, just mentioning him,
Ah, you
I
looked it
started
up. You looked it
researching,
up. Ah, okay,
looked
good.
him up.
Okay.
That's a beautiful
Mm,
documentary on him.
mm,
But just he has like these long, I mean, that like hour long, classes.
mhm.
But they're deep. I mean, they just keep you like on the edge of your seat. And the fact that he said for the first time in history, this video you just said, the first time in history, you see the Kabbalah actually being like manifested, the use of it, the technology of it.
Yeah.
And so, like right now, if you consider what's going on now, not around where we're at now, the way that this country that we're living in now is going, we've seen this glimpses of this before, but there's a lot of, the stock markets are down and so forth, and but we can't be affected by that in a negative way. We we're in a different reality, and with these technologies, I mean, really looking at everything as a technology now, this is what we do in order to combat against the darkness, and so we can bring that greater light. This is good. This is really good. Told Rabbi.
It's amazing, amazing. Okay, so all right, so let's just keep going on this. Yeah, we're definitely in that mode of bringing down that light, feeling the light, connecting to it. Okay, so the dream of Mordecai, the dream, is the dream of Mordecai fulfilled. Esther knew not of what was happening in the court. It was great and was greatly alarmed when her attendants told her that Mordecai had appeared in the precinct of the palace clothed in sackcloths and ashes, and she was overcome by fright that she would be deprived of joy of motherhood, to which she had been looking forward to happy with happy expectancy. She sent clothes to Mordecai, who, however, refused to lay aside his garb of mourning until God permitted miracles to come to pass for Israel, whereby he followed the example of such great men as David, and Ahab, and the Gentile inhabitants of Neviah, Neviah, Neviah at the time of Jonah. He says, by no means would he array himself in the court entire so long as his people was exposed to sure suffering. So at this time, what's going on? So at this time, the decree has already came down. Mordecai is like trying to rally all the people. In Mordecai's outlook at this time was, he wasn't scared of Haman. He wasn't scared of Achashverosh. He wasn't scared of any of that. What he was worried about was the sins that the Jewish people have committed during their interactions with Achashverosh and the meals and this and the lunacy and all the crazy stuff that went down. He was worried about that. And that was a very mechanism, remember, that was used against us. We are undefeated. We cannot be stopped as long as we stay with the Torah. As long as we focus on becoming more pure, more connected, more elevated, more transformational, more loving, more caring, more giving, we're staying in that place. We're going to create a protection shield because these are the laws of the universe. He says, to escape all the dangers from spying ears, Haf and Mordechai had their conversations in the open, like Jacob when he consulted with the wives of Leah and his wives Leah and Rachel about leaving Laban's house. By Hakat Mordecai, I don't know what this Hakat is. Hakat Mordecai sends word to the queen, and Haman was Amaleki, who was an ancestor whose ancestors sought to destroy Israel. He requests her to appear before the king and to plead for the Jews, reminding her at the same time of a dream that he once had and told her about. Once when Mordecai had spent a long time weeping, and it says once when Mordecai had spent a long time weeping and lamenting over the misery of the Jews in the diaspora, and prayed fervently that God redeem Israel and rebuild the temple, he fell asleep, and in his sleep, in his sleep, a dream visited him. That's interesting. That's interesting. A dream visited him. That's a crazy thing. Normally, you think someone dreamed, but they're saying a dream visited him. That's an interesting thing. He dreamed he was transported to the desert, place he had never seen before. Many nations lived there, jumbling together. Only one small and despised nation kept apart at a short distance. Suddenly, a snake shot up from the midst of the nations, rising higher and higher and growing stronger and stronger in a proportion to the rows. He says it darted in the direction of the spot in which the tiny nation stood and tried to project himself upon it. Da, 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 da. He says, imperturbable, I guess, clouds of and darkness enveloped that little nation. And when the snake was on point of seizing it, a hurricane arose from the four corners of the world, covering the snake as clothes over a man, and blew it to bits. The fragments scattered hither and there like chaff before the wind, until not a speck of the monster was found anywhere. Then the clouds and the darkness vanished from above, and the little nations, and the splendor of the sun again enveloped it. He says, this dream Mordecai recorded in the book. And when the storm began to rage against the Jews, he thought of it and demanded that the Esther go to the king as advocate for a people. At first, she did not feel inclined to accede to wishes of Mordecai by her messenger. She recalled to his mind that he himself has insisted upon her keeping her Jewish descent a secret. He says, besides, she had always tried to refrain from appearing before the king at her own, or her own like invitation, right? In order that she may not be instrumental in bringing down a sin upon her soul, for she well recommended Mordecai's teaching a Jewish woman captive among a heathen, of who her own accord goes to them, loses her portion in the Jewish nation. So she didn't want to approach this guy because she didn't want him to like start getting weird ideas. She had to rejoice that her petition had been granted, and the king had not come night unto her at this last month. For now she was voluntarily presenting herself before him. Furthermore, there's a lot of deep stuff just out. He says, furthermore, she had made her messengers inform Mordecai that Haman had introduced a new palace regulation that anyone who appeared before the king without being summoned by Haman should suffer a death penalty. Therefore, she could not, if she could go to the king to advocate for the cause of the Jews. So anyway, so Mordecai's aroused at this point. He was out arousing the people, basically telling the people, "Hey, this is it. All we have is Hashem. No one's going to protect us. No one's going to come and rescue us. That's it, right? Right? So that's one part. Second part is he's going to Esther and say, "Hey, you got to tell the king this whole thing." He has, he even recalled a dream that he had that fits perfectly to this. And she basically says, like, bro, I can't do it. Like, there's a lot of factors around it. She said, well, one, if I go there, this guy will try to maybe be intimate with me, and then I shouldn't be with a person like this. This is a Torah you taught me. So I do my best to stay away from him, right? And if she's basically saying if she does engage with him, it's not voluntary. Like he comes to her, he said, but if she goes by him, it's a different dynamic, right? So that's all very deep things. Think about, anyways. But the point is just saying that. And he says another factor is that Haman made a rule that whoever goes before the king has to go through him, and if they don't, they'll be put to death. So she doesn't want to deal with that either. She says Esther's urged her uncle to remain from insisting Haman and refuting him with a pretext of reckoning of hatred of Esau upon Jacob to upon Jacob, I mean, from hatred of Esau to Jacob upon Mordechai and his nation. So she's saying, bro, leave this guy alone. This guy is a Amaleki. This guy is crazy. You know, he's designed to want to destroy us, as this is nature. Mordechai, however, was firmly convicted that Esther's destiny by God was to save Israel. How could her miraculous history be explained otherwise? Like, why would you be in this situation at the same time that we're going through this? There's no way, bro. Come on. Like, you kidding me? You're the queen, right? You think, and then now all of a sudden this crazy guy puts a decree. You think it's by accident? He said, at the very moment Esther was taken to court, and he had a thought. It was conceivable that God would force so a pious woman would wed a heathen, where it is not that she was appointed to save Israel from this menacing dangers. Right? As we just said, it's no way. It's no way. It's no way we're all talking right now if we're not supposed to, affect change in the world, right? He says, firm as Mordecai was in his determination to make Esther take a hand in affairs, yet he did not find it a simple matter to communicate with her. For the Hachid was killed by Haman as soon as he discovered that he was acting as a mediator between Mordecai and Esther. There was none to replace him until God dispatched an archangel, Michael and Gabriel, to carry messages from one another from back and forth to another. So that's the thing. And you said it best earlier. We're not living in the same reality as you. And in fact, we've been subjugating ourselves by believing in your development level, seeing the world through your lenses. We've been limiting ourselves, saying like, hey, I can only communicate to a telephone. Hey, maybe I'm not limited to that. Maybe I'm not limited to that. So he says Mordecai sent her words, and she let the opportunities help, and she let the opportunities to help Israel. Wait. Mordecai sent her a message. If she let the opportunity to help Israel slip by, she would have to give account for her omission in a heavenly court. So he says, if you don't step up, you're gonna have to deal with this in the court, right? He says to Israel in distress. However, help would come from another quarter. So he's saying like, hey, at the end of the day, even if you don't help, we're going to be redeemed. I don't know how it's going to happen. I'm just talking to you because you're in that situation, and it seems like you could get it done. But number one, if you don't help us, number one, you're going to answer for why would you not fight to save millions of Jewish lives in a continuum of humanity? And the only reason why there's planet Earth exists is for Israel to perform mitzvot, right? Give me another reason why the planet's here. So, all right. So he says, moreover, he astonished her that the descendants of Shaul, it was her duty. She's a descendant of Shaul to basically do tshuva for ancestor sins and not having a God put to death. So she said, hey, not only that, we're dealing with the Amalekis right now, and your ancestor Shaul, we wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for your ancestor. So you got to do it. Had he had done as he was bidded, the Jews would have now not have to fear this situation of Haman. And he says, in the offspring of a God. And he says, in the blade, he blade her supplicants her heavenly Father to deal with the presence of her enemies in Israel, as he had dealt with the enemies of in former ages. And to give her encouragement, Mordecai continued. So he gave encouragement. It's interesting when you see the way that he organized his argument, right? So the first thing is he told her she has to go. She says it's not a good thing, and she gave reasons why. Then he came back and said to her, he says, okay, well, you know what? If he's saying that, number one, if you don't do it, right, you're gonna have to answer for it in Shemaim, right? That's number one. Number two is number one, you're gonna have to answer for it in Shemaim. Number two is you're gonna have to answer for it in Shemaim, and then two, we're gonna be saved. So you're not doing us a favor, you're doing yourself a favor, right? And then from there, he even personalized it and talked about, her history. And it's just like it's not by accident that you're in this situation. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like, well, how do you even think you're here? Like, why would you think just random that you're here? And not only that, how are you here and you're a descendant of Shaul? So these are a very big point. So now he's going to give encouragement. He gave her some hard talk. So now he comes about. He says, "Is Haman so surpassing great that his plan against the Jews must succeed? Does it mean that he is superior to his own ancestors, Amalek, who God crushed and is participated himself upon of Israel, who predicted himself upon Israel?" So I'm not saying everything right, but the point is just saying, is he mightier than the 31 kings who fought against Israel, to whom Joshua slew with the words of God? Is he stronger than Sisera, who went against Israel with 900 iron chariots, and yet he met his death at the hands of one mere woman? The punishment for having withdrawn use of the water springs from the Israelites to prevent their wives from taking the prescribed ritual bath and from the fulfilling of the conjugal duties. Is he more powerful than Goliath, who revealed the warriors of Israel and was slain by David? So when we're hearing this, we have to think that Mordecai is talking to us, right? And he's talking to us about this great task that we have in his lifetime of completing our purpose of our soul, right? And that's going to require us to leave old belief systems, leave old habits, and start to see ourselves in a new way. And so he's saying this. He's like, what are you talking about? The challenges that we have around them, the world's designed for us to be victorious. It's designed. Don't you have enough proof that you go against your greatest fear, your greatest limitation, and you're going to be victorious? Do you have enough proof? So Mordecai is talking to us right now because we're in that frame of Esther. We're vulnerable, we're little, we're around this big king. How do we get in this situation? We live in this involuntary reality where we're subjugated to things. And then all of a sudden you come to me and ask me about this miraculous feat to do? Are you kidding me? This is like Moshe Rabbeinu almost, no? So he says, or is he more invincible than the sons of Orpah who waged war against Israel and were killed with David and his men? And therefore do not restrain thy mouth from prayer, thy lips from supplication. And on the account of the merits of the fourth of our fathers, Israel has ever and ever been snatched out of the jaws of death. We can't lose. He says, hey, and he who has all the time, he says, he who has at all times done wonders for Israel will deliver the enemy into our hands now. And he says, and for us to do it with him, esteem is to do the best to us, right? So he's saying, he said, this old English just messed me up. But the point is just saying, the thing is saying that, what are we worried about? We have to go and say, how far can I go? How high can I go? Oh, but then I can't do it because this, and I can't do it because that. I can't do it. You think you're in a different situation than Esther? So if Esther could be victorious as a random person, seemingly in this miraculous situation, and all she has is the guidance of the sages, right? In this case, it's Mordechai, but we're reading Mordechai too, and he's just saying the same words. What he endeavored to impress upon himself, Esther particularly, was that God would bring help to Israel without without her the word's right in front of me, without her interaction, without her intervening, right? But it was to her interest to use her the opportunity for which alone she has reached her exalted place to make up for the transgressions committed by the house of Saul and his descendants. Yielding a last argument of Mordechai, Esther was prepared to risk yielding to the last argument. She was like that. She was like, that's it. She's a, she was reading Mordecai's words, right? And these are angels coming to her. Okay, let's keep in mind, ancestors were communicating through angels. They took away people that's like, okay, I'm going to meditate on this level. She's going to meditate on this level, and we're going to connect in the cyber world. And he's sending arguments to her, and she's hearing that argument, and she's like, you know what? That's it. That's it. That's it. I don't care. That's it. I have no fear. If that means I'm going to be destroyed, if that means I'm going to be killed, God forbid, or any of that, it doesn't matter. I'm doing it for the sake of other people's lives. I'm doing it for the sake of the redemption of my ancestors who committed sins, who went away from the Torah, right? So I'm in this moment in the house, and if that means I have to sacrifice every sense of fear and phobia to be able to do the job that I'm here supposed to do in this lifetime, let it be. She made only one request of her uncle. He was to have the Jews spend 3 days in prayer and fasting on her behalf. She just said, hey, I'm going to do that, but everybody's fasting. Everybody's fasting on this because this is it, baby. Because if this goes wrong, we're done. Because this guy Haman is an Amaleki. This is like total payback. Okay, so he says at first, at first Mordecai was opposed to the proclamation of the fast because it was, she wanted to do it at the time of Passover. And the laws prohibited fasting on holidays. But he finally ascended to Esther's reasoning of what avail are the holidays if there's no Israel to celebrate them without. So this is the power of the fast. This is the power of the fast. And so he says, and there is no Israel to celebrate them without Israel. There would be not even a Torah, and therefore it's advisable to transgress the law. May God have mercy on us. This is where they're at. They're like, hey, this is where it's at. Reflections. We're not finished. We got another piece. We bring in Esther, but we're pausing in between. I can't hear you.
This is like so very weighty, so, just extremely like a like a weight of responsibility. I know you're excited. But it's just like a weight of responsibility. And we have many brothers and sisters who have achieved the understanding. And we're looking at, even like with Rabbi Berg, just seeing and listening to his clip that was in 1993. Okay. And I'm thinking like, okay, we were still in high school at that time, but this type of understanding was very apparent and in the earth, and people, learning and growing. And now, just fast forwarding to where we are right now and seeing like a transition or a shift that is taking place, even through like the life cycle of different people, and just seeing, Hashem just begin to make a shift. And I'm just trying to understand, like, okay, Father, how do you just kind of allow us to be a part of something that I can see is just so very great for your esteem, for a people who have been basically like written off, forgotten, and just basically cast out for a appointed time of death and destruction continually. And so I recognize and I realize that we have to just continue in much prayer, much tikkunin, much just seeking Hashem, because this is a very, very weighty responsibility that yourself, Chief Rabbi Pincus, and so many others who I'm not going to say like made it out of this whole. I don't really know how to word that. I have a daughter who's excited right now, but it's just how you're in a different understanding or frame of mind that many of us who are still here in North America are just feeling like, oh wow, it has been so hopeless for us. It has been so just dark. Like Rabbi Berg said, it's been a dark, dark place. And the only way for us to get out of this dark place, this reality that we feel around us, is to accept the understanding that there is a light that is available to us, and we got to learn and be just reacclimated back to Hashem in a way that we have never known before. It's that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, and the thing is too, it's kind of like that idea when the Jews will be marching with the tabernacle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And basically they said, like, even though there were people on all four corners of the tabernacle, like it still was like floating. You know what I'm saying? So as much as it seems like, wow, like what a humongous task, right? But as we're learning by Esther and Mordecai, it's going to happen anyways. This is part of redemption. We just have the ability to play a part in a whole bunch of pieces that are working simultaneously that are there. So yeah, it is a big thing, but is it really? When you think about like so many people throughout history, that have made such tremendous impacts. I remember, years ago, I went to Egypt and I went to Cairo, and it was probably one of the biggest impactful moments of my life, because when I was there, I was coming from Mecca, Medina. I made like Hajj. I went to Saudi Arabia. I was like living there for a little bit or whatever. And then so when I went to Egypt, it was like I went to the pyramids, and the pyramids were like, I was like tripping because like when you fly into Egypt, the top of the pyramids are piercing the clouds as you're flying in. That's how high they are, right? So these bricks are humongous. But when I finally got to the ground, after a couple of days, I actually went to see the pyramids. And it was just like the thing that blew me away, that there was like somebody who woke up in the morning and said, wow, like they had a vision to build these things, right? And I was thinking like, wow, that person who had the vision to build these pyramids looked exactly like me. I was like, dude, this is like some random black guy, like who just like woke up, or somebody we would call black, right? And he woke up, or Egyptian, and he woke up and had this vision, right? And from that perspective, just really powerful. You know what I mean? It was just really powerful, like to see those things and think about like this thing was made thousands of years ago. You know what I mean? So anyways, the point is just saying, so yeah, so it's heavy, but it's a part of God's plan, and it's just kind of like Moses, like kind of like raising his hands and the sea splitting. All right, so let's go in. We're gonna go back in. We're gonna take it to the next level. We're holding by Esther now. Esther's prayer. The spotlight's on her. And we're seeing the power of the Torah, the power of the tools, and they're communicating cyberly at this point. Like that's how high the level is right now, right? And you got to think about it. The whole world, the whole existence of the world is a part of this moment, right? Like there's people all over the world. Things are happening all over planet Earth right now during this generation, right? There's like people all over planet Earth. God is choosing this to tell us this story, right? And so this story is like all of the whole universe, everything is there, right? But the reality is, to be Israel is to be responsible for the whole world. That's why we're doing things. We're bringing down this light for the whole planet Earth. When we're doing Rosh Hashanah, right? All of mankind is judged. All of mankind is judged. But who's out doing the work on Rosh Hashanah to remove the judgment from the world? Who's blowing the shofar? Who's doing the tefillah? Who's asking God for forgiveness? Right? Who's doing it? The other nations, they're at work, they're chilling, they're on the beach, right? They're hanging out, summertime, you know, with sports popular then? What is it, football, baseball, whatever. The point is just saying that's their motivation. And we up in the synagogue praying for God to remove judgment from planet Earth. You know, and we're the thieves, man. Y'all Jews, y'all be stealing all the time and y'all be doing all this stuff, man. We don't like y'all. All right, man, fine. Y'all don't like us. But anyways, the point is just saying, like, that's what we're dealing with. You know what I mean? So it's just a very, go ahead, please.
You know, by you saying that, you know, just the mindset of that Esther got to the point when she got enough information and enough encouragement to whereas, you know, and it made her remember, it made her think back, and it made her remember just her family, her people, the struggles that her people went through, the things that they overcame. And it's like, okay, this is the spotlight is on me now, you know, and you know, now is the opportunity for me to make the right decision in this time frame. And I'm just impressed by the place that she got to. That Mordecai was already there. It's like he was already just instantly there. You know, when he heard the decree, he started, you know, he went sackcloth, ashes, fasting, you know, in the courtyard, refusing to dress, you know, in beautiful attire, you know, and it's like he encouraged her to get where he was at, you know, to get where he was at, you know, and to get to that place, that brings a whole nother understanding about, you know, when we talk about drinking to a stupor, you know, whereas the reality around you, you're not even aware of it. It's like, you know, man, I look, hey, it doesn't even matter. You know, it makes us think about Harriet Tubman, you know, where she got to a point where she, you know, she started going back down into the South to free slaves. It's like what was she thinking? What where was she at mentally? Where was she at spiritually? And what was she communicating with? What was she tapping into that gave her that kind of courage to whereas death was not even it didn't affect her, you know, the idea of death, the idea of torture, it just didn't affect her. You know, we used to when we played football, we used to before a game get into what we call that zone, right? But you know that zone lasted for that game, and you know, and after that, you know, it was over. But this is a lifestyle. You know, this is really a lifestyle. That whereas, listen, this is what we have to do. This is what we're called to do. This is our time to do it. And you know, I don't want to answer. You know, I don't want to answer at the end of the game per se. You know, I don't. You know, I want to leave it all on the field when it's my time to leave. I don't want to go into the heavenly courts and then have to answer for what I did not do. You know, and so that frame of mind is important, especially around this time.
Yeah, that you know that's a beautiful point you just brought out. Like that's a huge concept, right? And that's that rationale moment that Esther went through, right, is in all of our hearts, right? It's just like, you know, when you're in a situation of somewhat comfort and you perceive that you're surrounded by situations of potential danger, if you disrupt that comfort, most people live their whole lives that way. You know what I'm saying? Their whole life is that way. And Esther's confronted with that, right? She's confronted with that situation where she has to make a decision of that she's going to leave the comfort of what, you know, she randomly got placed in this through natural selection, right? Just randomly. Or she's going to say that, no, it's not random. I was actually here for a reason, and this is why, right? And that was a correction for her soul, right? That her soul had to be placed in that situation. And I guess that's why it's so powerful to connect it to the idea of Shaul, right? Is to be able to say, like, yeah, like it was like she not only that, let's just break down the science. So you opened up a door on this. So the thing is like this. So the family that we come from lets us know about the corrections we're supposed to make. Right? Like our family lineage, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
awesome. That's
Yes.
awesome. We
Yes.
got
Yes.
Yeah.
that's powerful. That's
But
powerful.
yeah, but they bring it out. Esther and them bring it out. So Mordecai's argument, hey, he's like, your lineage, which you come from, that whole situation, you're in this moment now to correct that. Right? This is your moment to correct that. And it just so happens that part of that correction has to do with you leaving your comfort zone, right? By you going against what you perceive. And Mordecai's like, wait, do you know who you are? You are Boss Israel. You are, this is what we do. We're in impossible situations and we redeem. We get, he used to say, we're tucked from the jaws of death over and over again throughout history. Okay, so have faith, have certainty, have complete certainty that you can accomplish this dynamic. And so how far are we willing to go? Because the world that we live in, when I was in Egypt, I'll tell you this, when I was in Egypt, I was walking around looking at these buildings. I was like, bro, we sit up here glorifying the Empire State Building. They out here building all types of structures. I went into this one building and the architecture was I don't know how many hundreds of years, thousands. I don't know how long it was. I can't even tell you. I don't want to make it up. But the architecture in it, it was one of their ancient mosques. The architecture was like this. If you walked into the front of their prayer building, and you spoke, the way the architecture was, that the voice was traveling through the walls, like your vibration, and it would make its way all the way to the back of the building. They didn't need microphones. You know what I'm saying? They could just speak, and in the way that so they were thinking in completely different ways. And so when I saw that, I was like, bro, that Western stuff is lightweight. You know what I mean? It's completely lightweight. Our buildings, the structures, all this type of stuff. I'm like, bro, like it's like, and this stuff is like, this is like 1,000 years old building, 500 years old building. You know what I mean? So the thing is saying that our true human potential has been in shackles. It's been in slavery, right? It's been subjugated in Egypt, right? That's the slavery of Egypt, is our potential not being expressed in his lifetime. This is the whole dynamic. So all the light that we're connecting to, all the technology that we're bringing down into this world, all the energies we're connected to are the fuel our soul, right? Which we know it corresponds to every limb in our body and our intelligence and our ability to express thought or manifest thought. And it fuels all that, and then we create reality. What is the reality we are supposed to create? The expression of our potential. That's it. That's why we're here. So it's everybody has their thing. You know what I mean? Some people have family; they got to do other things. Some people have made a lot of money in business, but they didn't have family. You know what I mean? Everyone has this dynamic of what they got to do. But the point is Abraham and Sarah's life, and they were senior citizens, right? They're like way older than we are, right? And their life started when they recognized that they had the ability to save the world. That was the beginning. That was the beginning of that. And the Torah starts with them. It teaches us them as people who are the first people on a mission. Okay, Noah was on a mission, but it was a personal mission. Him and his family. Abraham and Sarah took on the responsibility for the world, right? And that was the beginning of their life, right? And so and God spoke to Abraham for the first time. He was 75, right? So it's just saying that, like, this dynamic of what we live in a system that has told us, okay, this is what you're supposed to do at this age. This is how intelligent you are. This is what your capability are. And they do it through report cards, through imagery, through stories. Oh, I'm from this neighborhood. Okay, I'm supposed to do this. The whole thing's indoctrination. The whole thing is indoctrination to take you away from what your unique potential is. Because if you have millions of people focused on their unique potential, it'll be hard to control them and have a workforce, right? Because everybody would just be doing their own thing. They'd be like, hey, man, I'm cool on your career and all that. Actually, I'm moving to Africa, with my $20,000, student loan. And instead of that, I'm moving over to Africa, and I see you guys in a minute. I'm growing a village. You know what I mean? That type of thing, right? So that type of freedom is not pervasive, right? And so what we're working through right now is understanding this light of Purim, this light of total unification, right? Go ahead, please.
Hey, also, Chief Rabbi, as you were talking, and I'm telling you, we're just meditating on Esther and Mordecai, and when you brought up about how she was trying not to go before the king because she didn't want him to get any ideas, I've heard some Purim teachings in the past, and they use Purim, they use this teaching, they use Esther, Mother Esther, they use her to really try to, in my own opinion, like to degrade and to put down our women. Okay, but just looking at Purim, and this is how we've always felt, that it really causes us to be grateful and to acknowledge and to uplift, to encourage our women, our mothers, our daughters, our wives, because it just made me think about our mothers that were being forced to be mistresses of on these plantations and whatnot, and how they understood their circumstance, and they understood that they couldn't run. They understood that they had to just deal with what was going on. But in order to keep a level of dignity for themselves, it was always that it was forced. It was not that they were going to be parading themselves or submitting themselves or just like they're just ultimately going along with it, but that it was, like this is just the situation I'm in, but I'm not gonna freely just give myself over to this heathen.
Hey, you are cooking right now. You're opening up new gates. I'm telling you, open up new gates. So like now, the gate that you just opened up right now, hey, and as soon as I get out of here, hey, I'm dropping this on my boys. This is fire off the streets, right? So the thing is, it's like this. You open up the gate, you says, wait, the black woman is Esther. She is Esther. That's who she is. She had to lay with that man on that plantation. She had to do that in order to save the family, to save the community. She had to do that. She is Esther, right in front of us, living that. She had to do that. Sending messages secretly, communicating. She is Esther. Let's keep going. God, you're on fire. Bro, as soon as I'm dropping this. I'm dropping this on. This is unbelievable. She is Esther. That is her story. That is her healing story. Oh my, this is amazing. And then when we start on the prayer of Esther. See how God's working? He already put the segue in here. Okay. Okay, so he says the prayer of Esther. According Mordecai made arrangements for a fast and a prayer in a meeting, a prayer meeting. He says, in every day of the festival, he had himself fried across the waters in other side of Shushan, where all the Jews of the city could observe the fast together. So he brought everybody together. It was important that the Jewish residents of Shushan, beyond all the other Jews, should do penance and seek pardon from God, because they had committed the sin of partaking in Achashverosh's banquet. He says 12,000 priests marched in the procession, trumpets on their right hand, and the holy scrolls of the laws were in their left, weeping and mourning and exclaiming against God. Here is the Torah thou givest. He says, thou below. They're just going out. They're just begging God for help. And he says, when that comes to pass, who had left and read the Torah and make mention of thy name, and the sun and the moon will refuse and shed their light abroad, and for they were created only for the sake of Israel. And they all fell on their faces and said, answer us, King, our Father, answer us, our King. And he says, and the whole people joined in their cries, and the celestially wept with them, and the celestials wept with them, and the fathers came forth from their graves. This is how powerful the people are coming out of their graves. He says, after the 3-day fast, Esther arose from the earth and dust, and made a partition and partake herself to the king. So Esther, she was fasting too. She was fasting too. And she arrayed herself in the silken garments embroidered in the gold from Orpah and sing. So she just put on her best linen. Wait, check this out. Check this out. This is how bad it gets. He says, spangled in diamonds, and pearls sent her from Africa. They had to put Africa in there. And he says, and the golden crown was on her head, and on her feet, and on her feet were shoes of gold. Sounds heavy. And he says, it's after she completed her attire. So she just got this is African American woman stuff, man. She just put on her stuff. She just put on her stuff. And so she says, and she completed her attire, and she pronounced the following prayer. So this is the prayer for Esther. So you could go back to this, and you could go over this prayer during the fast. And so she says, thou, or at the end of the fast, rather, right? This is after the fast, and she gets dressed and that whole thing. So this is the prayer. Thou art is the great God, and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the God of my father Benjamin. She says, not because I consider myself without blemish, and I do dare appear before the foolish king, that the people of Israel may not cut off from the world. And it is not for the sake of Israel alone that the whole world was created. The whole world was created, and if Israel should cease to exist, who will come and explain, holy, 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 twice before thee? He says, thou didst save Hananiah, Mishael, and Azrael, in the from the burning furnace, right? They jumped in the furnace and were saved. And he says, and Daniel out of the lion's den. And so to save me, to save me out of the hands of the foolish king, and to make me appear charming and graceful in his eyes, and I entreat him in his ear to my prayers. So she already putting spirits on him. She's already putting spirits on him. She's asking for divine assistance. She's saying, hey, Hashem, this is what I need you to do. This is what I'm up against. She's dealing with this. So she's already putting spirits on the king. He doesn't even know what he's up against. She says, I entreated thee to give ear to my prayer in this time of exile and in banishment from our land. By the reason of our sins, or treating the words of the holy scriptures are accomplished upon us. Ye shall sell yourself unto your enemies for the bonds and for the bondsmen, and no man shall buy you. And I decree and the decree to kill us has been issued. We are delivered upon the sword from the destruction of the root of the branch. The children of Abraham covered themselves with sackcloth and ashes, but through the elder sin what wrong have the children have committed? He says, what wrong have he says, but through the elders sinned, what wrongs have the children committed? And through the children's wrong, what have the suckling done? And the nobles of Jerusalem came forth from their graves, and for the children were given up to the sword. How quickly have the days of our joy flown by! The wicked Haman has surrendered us to our enemies for slaughter. And I will recount before the deeds of thy friend, and with Abraham will I begin. And thus did they try him with all the trepidations, and yet did thou found him faithful. Thou would support his beloved children for his sake, in the aid of them, and that you would bear them as unbreakable in the seal in thy right hand, and call Haman on account for the wrong he would do to us, and be be venged upon the sons of Hamadi-Data, and demand the of Haman. I don't know what the word is, of Haman, and not of thy people, and then sought the annihilation of us at one stroke. He and his enemies and the afflictors of thy people who endeavor to hear on all sides. She keeps going with an eternal bound and bound of the dust upon thee, O thou that you would withhold us from the sake of Isaac, who was bound in Haman. So we're bound. So just like Isaac was bound, and you save Isaac, you save us. Haman offered the king 10,000 talented of silvers for us. Raise up their voice and answer us, and bring forth us out of this narrow place into enlargement. And those who breakfast the mighty crush Haman, so that he may never again rise from this fall. And I'm ready to appear before the king to entreat my graces for my inheritance. Woo! She's bringing out the inheritance. And she says, and send thou the angels of compassion with me. She said, bring the angels with me. She's literally bringing, she's like literally speaking and creating and pulling things out of the universe. She's recreating, she's moving the judgment. She's affecting the cosmos. She's bringing angels. She's doing all this. And she says, may the righteousness of Abraham, she's calling her ancestor. She's bringing all these names down. This is the technology. May the righteousness of Abraham go before me, and bind up Isaac, and the binding of Isaac rise above me, and the charm of Jacob be put into my mouth, and the grace of Joseph be upon my tongue. And happy the man who putteth his trust in God. He has not confounded, and he will lend me his right hand and his left hand, to which he will create a whole new world. And he says, and for yea of Israel will pray for me, as I pray in your behalf, and for whatsoever a man may ask for God in the time of his distress, is he granted unto him. And let us look upon the deeds of our father, and do like upon them. And he says, and I will answer upon your stipulations. And the left hand of Abraham has yielded Isaac by the throat, and the right hand is grasped, the hand grasped a knife. And he was willing, and he willingly did by biting, and nor did he delay the execution that you commanded. And the heaven opened up the windows and gave space to the angels, who cried bitterly, and says, whoa, whoa, the angels were crying in Shemayim when Abraham was going to Shech Yitzhak. And he says, the angels were crying. Hashem opened up the heavens, all the angels saw. And he says, and this should be come to pass. And he says, also upon thee, answer me for that givest the ear unto all who are afflicted and oppressed. And thou art called the merciful and graceful, thou art, and slow to anger, and the great in the loving kindness and truth. Our ears, she's just going off. He says, hear our voice and answer us, and lend us out of our distress into enlargement. For 3 days I have fasted in accordance with the number of days Abraham journeyed to bind his son before the altar. That's the 3 days. And he says, and he says, and thus make the covenant with him, and did promise him, and whatever thy children be in distress, I will remember in the binding of Isaac favorably unto them, and delivering them out of their troubles. Again, I have fasted. He reminds him, I fasted for 3 days, corresponding to the 3 classes of Israel, the priests. Now she's bringing another element. She said, I also had in mind the Kohanim, the Levites in Israel, who stood on the front of Mount Sinai, and the Lord hath spoken, will we do and be obedient. He says, and Esther concluded her prayer, and she said, this is the conclusion of her prayer, O thy Lord of the hosts, thou shalt search their heart, and reign in this hour, and do thou members of the merit of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob, that my petition to thou is not turned aside, and nor my request be unfulfilled. So we'll stop here. Any thoughts, reflections, ideas? Your girl went off.
Look, there's a lot to unpack with that prayer, and just the whole mind. First and foremost, it really moved me and really touched me to hear that during this time that the elders, the priests, they unified, they got together, and they were holding the Torah scroll, and they just was like, look, man,
That's it. That's
whatever
it.
going on around here, that's y'all's business. Y'all done put a decree that we're to be killed. So you can't hurt me. We gonna get it. We gonna come together. We gonna pull out the Torah scroll. We gonna march down the city streets. We gonna lay out, cry, and pray to our God. And when y'all see us bow down together in droves, we bow down to our God, not to Haman, not to Ahasuerus. We bow down to our God. So, and we see that they were moving in this technology, and so that means that our ancestors were moving partly in that same technology during the civil rights marches, all these things. We knew that that was a technology, innately, and we saw some benefits from it. So my next thing is that coming into, and I, I'm bringing it back to, because this makes relevant to us. Coming into slavery, our oppressors, if read any of these documents, if they knew this history, if they had this stuff documented, if they knew the books and all that, you got to know that that's why they say, no, man, we got to make a law forbidding it for these people to even learn how to read. And we don't even want them having church services. Our people was running out into the woods to pray and to have services in the middle of the woods, because our oppressor did not want us to pray. He did not want us to read. He wanted to teach us our spirituality. And so if they got all this information, this was warfare from the beginning. So now, hey, the door is open. The gate is open, and it's time now to walk in it.
I was thinking about Esther, and just the fact that she had, desires, and she had things that she, wanted to have as a woman, a family, children, all of those things that was spoken about at the beginning. But when Mordecai comes to her and he begins to just give her all of the information, and they're having this conversation, and she doesn't even want to be in this place with this man, she has to then realize that this is so much bigger than me, that I've got to get myself up from here, and I've got to get, myself, adorned in such a way that I can go in and do what needs to be done for not even, yes, for Israel, but this is like for all of the world, that we must be preserved so that all of mankind can be able to see this light that is illuminating during this time. And so it's like we're looking at this and we're okay, yes, the so-called African Americans here in this nation, they've gone through this, they've gone through that, but it's been so many times where you see so many nations have just desired to have a piece of us. And it's like, for what reason? So if we take that energy and put it towards holiness and towards doing what Hashem has called us to, then it will be just a beautiful thing. But we have to be able to get the understanding and go through this process, we got to have those Mordecais, and we got to have those experiences like Esther, where we just stop thinking about solely ourselves and think about, the picture that Hashem, why he created, creation is.
But you brought up something that just made me think about something, because I'm starting to replay these, like Rabbi Bird, may his memory be blessed, he brought up.
I mean,
he says that he mentioned that Mashiach ben Yosef showed up, that deliverance, that teshuvah showed up there, and what ends up happening is that it's just amazing to me that when you see this happening, even throughout Israel's history, you see the male part, and then you see the female part. When you look at Devorah, deliverance comes from Sisera through the obedience of Barak, and then you also have the obedience of Abido, which was Devorah's husband, that let her go. You got Devorah. Then there's the mother that actually assassinates Sisera, and that's deliverance. So what it's telling me is that in this day, right now, it's going to take that unified effort between our men and our women, the sons of Abraham and the daughters of Sarah, to come in to make this ultimate correction in the earth, to bring Mashiach and have that culmination for the deliverance of the whole world.
Amen. Amen. All right. So tomorrow, let's try to do it earlier tomorrow, because tomorrow night, because the 15th is on actually Shabbat. Here in Jerusalem, we're going to read it actually on the 14th, right? Right, we're doing it on 14th. So the 14th, the nighttime, which would be probably closer to now, right? For me, so let's do it like, relatively early tomorrow, like, like around like, normal time, like 15:30 my time, like we normally would do. You know, I'm gonna do with Otunel earlier around like 13, and then so after that we could just do it, and then I'll be good to go, and I could go out, and I mean I'm not getting a costume. I'm getting like a hat. You know what I mean? That's as far as just going. Anyways, but I can't hear you if you're saying. You're on mute. You're on mute.
So we're basically going to be keeping Purim, the day of Purim, on the same day then.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Oh, Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, let's do that. But even though we're kind of keeping it in terms of the Megillah, but in terms of the meal and giving the gifts, it's going to be on Sunday, because it's the day
You
after
said
Shabbat.
Sunday?
Yeah, it'll be only in Jerusalem, only people in Jerusalem, behind the walled city. It's weird. It's weird. It's like a weird Purim. You know what I mean? It's like well, okay, like what's going on? You know what I mean? Type of a thing. But nevertheless, hey, everything's exciting. You know what I mean? But so anyway, so that's tomorrow. And anyway, so we'll do like like 15 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
So that would be 7 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
Okay.
If you want to do 15:30, we could do that. You know, it'll just be better because once the sun go down,
No,
is when everybody's.
no.
All right, that's great, perfect. Okay, so we'll do that tomorrow, and we'll just continue. We'll just stay in it. It's like big levels. We're in it, and I'll see you tomorrow. B'vat Hashem.